Lots of my research has been about how do we keep people mobile in what we call this hypermobile society for people in later life, because things happen quite naturally to us all as we age at different rates for different people. So changes in physiology, changes in cognition, so memory, attention, that kind of thing, that make driving more difficult and potentially more dangerous in later life. And those things also impact then in if you have to give up driving, and then if you're lucky enough to have public transport or to walk or even cycle in later life becomes more difficult because of those changes. We've used methods in the projects that I've done from examining questionnaires, also interviews, workshops, got people to collect like travel diaries of where they go, but also using things like simulators to see if people are safe on the road and their reaction times and things like that, but always these very people-focused methodologies. Perfectly natural things happen to us all as we age, but how do we redesign the things around older people? The Department for Transport sets the crossing speed for people to walk across a crossing where, where that's a pelican crossing or, any traffic lighted crossing at 1.22 meters per second. It's often used across the world as the walking speed. That's quite a fast stride to walk across the road. And my research found that about 85% of people over 65 can't walk as quickly as that across the road. It makes older people feel very anxious about crossing the road. They don't want to be halfway across and worry that cars might come across. So, we did a bit of lobbying. There's some other research out there that found very similar kind of patterns. And what's happened as a result is that the change in policy was that local authorities could set that speed across the crossings themselves. We did a project with Great Western Railway to look at the age friendliness of their railway services. We took older people out on travels around their network. We got older people themselves just to tell us, about that journey and what they liked about it, what was difficult about it. And some really nice solutions came out, all sorts of things that, again, we wouldn't necessarily know if we went on those journeys ourselves. There's the traditional ones that we all hear about, like the difficulty of buying the right ticket and things like that. But actually the journey itself posed problems as well, whether that was boarding and alighting, where the accident statistics are actually quite high for people over 70, but also just walking through the train sometimes. So quite often solutions in this field are not massive. They're not hugely new technology-based changes. They're often just tweaking what's already there and just making things like lighting and signage more easy for older people to navigate. We've worked with a number of different bus companies about older people's journeys on buses. They're big users of buses in across the country as a whole, and we found that almost all the accident statistics on the bus itself are from older people. So some of that was about providing training to bus drivers and getting older people to provide the training themselves to bus drivers so that they could see some of these things in action. And then that was just about changing policy so drivers don't drive off until the older person's sat down. And also, making sure that they do stop when the bell's being pressed and things like that, and trying to encourage older people that they don't need to go and stand near the front and alert the driver to stop. We've also provided training for the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation. So they were very keen that their members, which are everything from transport planners to transport operators, people working across the transport sector, but they were very keen, again, on providing training around older people's needs for the whole journey. And the people who took the training, of which I think there's been about 400 or 500 people take it as an online package, the feedback we've had has been excellent. People just kind of knew a little bit about the issues, but just knowing that the last little bits about a problem with a journey or an issue, raising that awareness has made them change their practice, or at least think they'll change it. We've done a little bit of project about what happens if things turn too digital, and that's really a lot of where the future might lie. So it's still really important to actually physically go and be co-present with other people, it seems. So how do we enable that to happen at the right times and in the right places? Another area that's really important to look at in the future is things like automation and I guess AI within the transport system as a whole, and how that might affect an older people's journey. We'd hope that ought to make it more simple, ought to streamline it, but if we don't include older people in how those things get designed and developed, then it's not going to work particularly very well. So there's lots of exciting things happening in the world with regards to transport, but we've got to make sure older people's voices are heard within all of that space so that we design them well for an ageing population.